Hello again, and welcome to Winning with the Wrangler at Dick Powell's Leadership Corner, brought to you by Earth, Wind, Fire, Water Training and Development, where our passion is building leaders of today and tomorrow. First of all, I want to start off with encourage you and say this, that we can provide leadership programs for you and your team. You see, leadership guru John Maxwell famously stated that the law of the lid, leadership ability, is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. Your business can only grow as quickly as your leadership ability grows. Now, the biggest reason businesses get stuck and stop growing is that their leadership team has stopped growing. In short, if you want your business to grow, you have to be growing yourself. Now, I'm a certified success coach and founding partner with the John Maxwell team. John uses his experience and mine to have a strategic planning and leadership development, helping you set your goals for you and your business, and then ensure that you have a plan in place to execute it. Your business's success goal is what we dream about. Now, we can, here at Earth, Wind, Fire, Water Training Development, can provide you with programs such as How Not to Lose Your Bass in Business, which is a workshop on the entrepreneurial spirit. We also can provide you with Soar to Success with coaching skills, 52 tips empowering others and becoming a leader in your organization. We can do Soar to Success with the business of coaching, 52 tips on starting a coaching practice. We can also bring to you the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, the 360-degree leader, and everyone communicates but few connect, and putting your dream to the test. We can do all these things for you here at Earth, Wind, Fire, Water Training Development. Now, on today's program, if you hear yourself within the conversation, I want you to realize this: it's not all about you. We gather information from many different places and many different people. Today's information is going to start off with, a discussion on civil discourse in America. This is so important because we're finding that civil discourse seems to have lost, not only in politics, but in our homes, in our churches, in our schools. We seem to see this shrinking everywhere we go. Now, an interesting discourse was had, and I was part of that discussion, and the topic was the culture of interactions with faiths other than Christianity. Now, this was at a large organization, and it was many different groups, and we got together and really started to put some time and effort in this. But after 2 hours of going through the history lesson on 5 misguided understandings, and a 6th was added to take us to another level of understanding all by itself. You see, here we led to a comparative theology, a relatively new discipline within theology, which holds together comparative and theology in a creative tension. It represents a particular type of theological practice committed to deep interreligious learnings. That's the comparative. While staying rooted in a particular religious tradition, that's theology. Moreover, while many of its proponents came from the Christian religious tradition, it can have a starting point, the theology of religious traditions. Now, you say to yourself, why is this so important? Well, it's so important to understand where other people are and where they're rooted and why. Now, as we listened, we learned that the tension is really a good thing that holds the discussion together. Key in on the word discussion. It does require respect and acceptance from both sides. It requires a bridge of listening to learn about the other person and their beliefs with no judgment. Now, this is hard for us to do. Even myself, I struggled with it while we were there during those first 2 hours. But as I came more comfortable with actually listening to learn instead of listening to give an answer, things started to change. And I saw the change starting happening to the people around me. You see, the ability to learn how to have civil discourse between people is one that needs to be a part of our dialogue and instruction everywhere we go. You see, when you have a discussion, you have this discourse, this civil discourse, it takes away the anger and the misunderstandings and the jumping to conclusions. How important is that today? Well, I believe it's the most important thing that we can be teaching our youngest individuals and maybe our oldest, and teach them how to do it also, and everyone in between. You see, taking away the anger, the misunderstandings, and the jumping to conclusions when we have a discussion with others immediately disarms all those things and reasons to have to fight back. Let's take some looks, and I really want to spend some time here taking a look at some positive ways in which to start those discussions. Now, these positive ways are things you can put into place both at your home, at your work, at your religious organizations, and your nonprofits you're hooked up to. You see, these things are going to work everywhere. How exciting is that? That's exciting to me, that we do away with the anger and the misunderstandings and the jumping to conclusions, that we listen to learn. So let's look at this. First and foremost, I'm going to tell you that there needs to be some guidelines set. Until we all learn what those guidelines are, this becomes kind of an important piece to set down sort of the rules before we get started. You see, I want you to really think about, clarify what you are really wanting to accomplish. And when we start a conversation with someone, it's always to accomplish something. Either I'm trying to convince them, they're trying to convince me, we're trying to come up with something new. There's always a reason. And if there's not a reason, well, it's just two people just yammering at one another. That's kind of a waste. Now, the moderator sees to it that all have understood in a timely manner the topic at hand. When we're in a large organizational piece and there's more than two people, it always helps to have this kind of a moderator. And the moderator has but one job, and that's to see it keeps moving and each person understands the other, with no anger, no misunderstandings, and no jumping to conclusions. The ability to ask clarifying questions in a civil voice is encouraged after the speaker has finished speaking. So many times somebody has a little pause where they're thinking, and they really don't get to have that all piece of getting their whole thought out. And someone jumps in and immediately starts hammering on them or asking them 14 million questions, and they're not done yet. The most polite thing you can do is just give them a little time. Be quiet. Give them a few seconds. If they still don't say anything, the moderator might ask, are you finished? Are you ready for the next person? You see, that's the piece that happens. You need to agree that only one person can speak at a time. And no one's going to jump in or overrun and shout out or shout down someone else. You see, when we're listening to learn, we're actually maybe even taking notes. I'm going to encourage you to do that, because I think when you listen and take notes, it does two things. One, it shows you're in the moment. And two, it shows you have enough, thought process and you care enough about the other person that you're going to take a few notes and you're really trying to hear and understand and learn without the anger, misunderstandings, or jumping to conclusions. I often tell people to think about being around a campfire or a round table. This will place everyone on level ground. I like campfires because everyone sits around the fire and there's a central point that everyone is agreeing on. They like the heat from the fire, or they like to watch the flames. There's something they're agreeing on right away. And as they each get to speak around, there's an attention that's given. Round tables do the same thing. The Knights of the Round Table were often put forth as a place to discuss ways to do things and how to get things done. But only one person could speak at a time. Putting everybody on that same plane, on this, so they can each see each other, they can watch each other's faces, they can watch their hand movements, all those parts and pieces of communication. Because communication is oftentimes a lot more than just words. I'm going to encourage that everyone has the ability to say, I have a different conviction about that, calmly, when you disagree. You see, you can have a conviction about something that someone else doesn't have and still be friends. You know, when you still walk out the door and say, you know, I'm going to have to think about that some. I'm going to have to put that into my brain power and really consume that before I get back to you. You see, this listening to learn is more than just sitting there speaking. It is okay to disagree and still remain in a civil atmosphere. You know, I've heard people say, I disagree, but I still love you. If they're saying that and meaning it, that's okay. If they're saying that as to just shut you down, that's a different ballgame. But agree to disagree is still okay. Because in my world, that's saying, look, I don't really agree with you right now, but I need to go and process it. You see, everyone processes information in a different way and a different time. And that means some people need to really go back and think about it. For me, oftentimes I have to take my notes, go back and put some more time in, do a little research maybe, so I know that I have understood. And then I love to get it back with that person and say, look, I get it. Or, you know, I still don't get it, but I understand where you're coming from. That's the important part here of civil discourse. That's the part of teaching people how to speak to one another in a civil manner, with no vulgarity, with no yelling and screaming, with no calling names and belittling people. You see, we can talk about a thing. We are not talking about the person. And separating that means I'm going to use a civil discourse. I'm going to use a civil language. I'm going to be civil to that other person. I hope that starts to make sense to you, because it has made sense to me in the topics that we're dealing with in today's time. Now, I'm going to encourage you to start off with small groups or maybe even pairs, depending on the size of the group, and repeat often. Relationships are how people build a third thought process. When two people actually get together and each one starts to learn about the other, they listen to learn about the other person, where they come from, why they came to that decision, why they have that thought process, how they were brought up, where they were brought up, the language they speak. It becomes more evident to the learner, hey, we've got a lot more in common than I thought. Now, we might disagree on a few points, but hey, I see how we can actually build a bridge and be friends. I had a person tell me the other day, says, I don't care about building any bridges. I don't get what you want to do, build a bridge. I felt sorry for that person. Since then, I've still kept after it, and I'm still working on it. I'm not going to give up. I am going to find some way to have a conversation that person doesn't bust out into some kind of name calling or negative thing. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to encourage you not to do it either. I'm going to encourage all of us to instruct others on the concept of civil discourse. I don't think that this is a new subject. I think this subject has been talked about for eons. And I believe when I was younger, that's what my grandfather was trying to teach me, and how to speak to people, no matter what station they were in. When I was a young person, it seemed like everyone had classes of people that we lived in, but to my grandfather, there was no class, there was no station. He spoke to everyone in the same manner. There was a gentleman, my grandfather had a woodworking shop, and there was a gentleman who came in every afternoon who cleaned the shop. And as I got older, that turned into my job. And I worked with that older gentleman day in and day out, and he became like a surrogate grandpa, and did a little to find out that he lived down the road in a one-room ramshackle shack. And my grandfather was the kind of guy who would give anyone a job if they were willing to work. A great old man. I learned a lot from him. But had I not taken the time to learn to who he was and what he did and how he did it and where he come from, I would have never learned about all the great things he had done in his youth. To instruct others on the concept of civil discourse, I'm telling you, we need to do it with our youngest people and start there. We need to do it with our older folks like me, who had to learn to sit and listen, and really listen to learn instead of listen to just give an answer. Now, civil discourse, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you some suggestions so you can put them into your lifestyle. Exchange names. That's a good place to start. And open up with a subject of conversation. When we're doing groups, we oftentimes will throw out something that seems to be controversial, and it's always amazing to me. Some people in the group, that's not controversial at all, and others, oh my goodness, it's a red hot subject. We let them go first, by the way. Respect the guidelines. Okay? If everyone respects the guidelines, I'm going to tell you what, you're going to have a wonderful opportunity speaking with one another, learning from one another. And at the end of the evening or end of the time that you have set on this, the time you put, you're going to find people who are going to say, hey, can I talk to you later? Hey, let's get together and have a cup of coffee. You're going to find friendships being built, relationships being built, bridges being built. Now, I'm going to encourage you that during this dialogue suggestions, one of the biggest suggestions is this. Think about what you want to say. Speak clearly. Speak concisely. And with as few words as possible, as you can. Now, you can always tell more if needed when asked questions, or you can always come back to and say, hey, I got something else I want to say when someone else is done. You can always do a follow-up. It's all good. Okay? The biggest piece here, that if I could convey one of the biggest things and suggestions for civil discourse, is to listen, learn, and relax. Hey, what's the worst that can happen? If heated words come up, if vulgarity comes up, if belittling comes up, then the moderator needs to do something and squash it quickly. Refer everybody back to those guidelines to clarify what you are really wanting to accomplish. To the moderator sees to it all have understood in a timely manner and the topic at hand. That the ability to ask clarifying questions in a civil voice is encouraged after the speaker has finished speaking. Only one person can speak at a time. And think about being around a campfire or a round table. Have the ability to say, I have a different conviction about that, calmly, when you disagree. And it's okay to disagree and still retain a civil discourse. These are some important things that I believe that we need to be passing along. As leaders, we need to really make sure that people are understanding that civil discourse needs to be reintroduced into America today. Now, I see we have some time left, so I'm being encouraged to talk about unity. I don't even hardly know where to start, but I'll get going. Unity is oneness of mind, feeling, etc., as a number of persons concord, harmony, or agreement. That's right out of the dictionary. Unity is a relationship. Family, team, company, organization, or anywhere more than one unites is a concept that is easier to teach than do. Wow. The May 1987 edition of National Geographic included a feature about an Arctic wolf. Author L. David Meck described how a 7-member pack had targeted several musk oxen calves who were guarded by 11 adults. As the wolves approached their quarry, the musk oxen bunched in an impenetrable circle, their deadly rear hooves facing out, and the calves remained safely during the long standoff with the enemy. But then a single ox broke rank and the herd scattered into nervous little groups. A skirmish ensued and the adults finally fled in panic, leaving the calves to the mercy of the predators. Not a single calf survived. They say that ways to destroy unity come from lack or poor communication amongst the group from the leaders. They say that the way to destroy unity is to have a lack of buy-in of the vision. That's a personal ownership each to have. The lack of buy-in for the mission of personal ownership for each to have, and a lack of the strategy, the plan of personal ownership for each to have. One that didn't surprise me was they said to create a lack of unity was to have a lack of organizational chart to let people know who did what, when, where, how, and what they were accountable for. A lack of written expectations and job descriptions, which led to a lack of good morale and esprit de corps. A lack of trust, a lack of pride, an internal rebellion, drama, disagreements amongst the bigger crowd, divisions and little silos made, the my way or the highway thinking from the top leadership, the selfishness of individuals who only wanted to do their thing and it was all about them, anger unresolved from past things that happened in the past but had never been resolved, so they kept raising their ugly head, turning a blind eye to incompetence, having people in the organization who really weren't competent and weren't able to do their job because no one was holding them accountable, but turning a blind eye saying, well, you know, they've been here forever, this is what we've always done. There was many different reasons. Need to be the ruler, not the servant. You see, to be a king or queen was more important than serving the people whom they were over. And a destructive criticism. One of the places we just came from and helped out and moved forward, the biggest part is the upper level leaders had destructive criticism. No matter what someone suggested, in the rank and file, the people in the pews, the people who were actually there, the criticism was quick and responsive. Not my job. Sit down and be quiet. This is the way we've always done it. Now, I'm going to give you 9 ways to build unity within anything that you're a part of, whether it's a religious organization or your home. I believe that's where it needs to start. You see, one of the parts is one for all for one. I like the Three Musketeers. I liked them because it showed a unity that no matter what they were doing, they were going to do it together. Lead from wherever you are. One of the biggest things that we enjoy helping people understand is how to be a 360-degree leader and lead from wherever you're at. Because we truly believe that each and every person has the leadership ability. And if they're allowed to do so, they'll make a big difference in your organization. But I'll tell you what, if you learn to lead from wherever you are, it'll make a difference in your family. Have self-restraint. Ways to build unity is to have self-restraint. Do I need it right now? Is it a want or need? If it's a want, can you put it off for 28 or 48 hours to ensure that you have thought and done the research and gotten prepared? Is it something you really must purchase? You must have. You see, this thing of a must is, gee, we don't have any heat and it's cold outside. That's a must. You know, car's broken, you can't get to work. That's a must. Having fancy rims on that car, that's a need. Doesn't make the car go any faster, last any longer, doesn't do anything except make it look pretty, which you have to make your own decision there. To have unity, thoughtful listening is a big one. That's why we were talking about civil discourse here just earlier. This thing of thoughtful listening, listening to learn, listening with an open mind, listening to understand. Having compassion is a great way to build unity. Not everybody does the same things you do. Not everybody has the same life you have. And there will be times when you need to show compassion to the other person. Communication. Open, honest, two-way communication is a must to build unity everywhere you're at. Ongoing, continuous learning. Once you stop learning, you stagnate. And once you stagnate, you just turn like that green scum on the top of the pond, just sitting there waiting to dry up and blow away. Open discussion, civil discourse. Being able to have that discussion, I'll tell you what, we at this household had open discussions at the dinner table, and sometimes it got pretty scary for Mom and I, because we didn't really want to discuss those things, but our children did. An open, honest discussion had to happen. Well-defined, communicated, and bought into vision, mission, and strategy. If you truly want to build unity within your organization, with your home, life, your life, is to bring everyone together and work on that vision. What does it look like? What's the long-range plan? What's your mission? What's your purpose? What's your calling? Why are you here? And your strategy, what are the things you're going to do daily to see they happen? Now, a long time ago, a little child in an African tribe wandered off into the tall jungle grass and could not be found. The tribe searched all day but could not find the little boy. The next day, the tribal members all held their hands and walked through the grass together. This enabled them to find the child, but due to the cold night, he had not survived. In her anguish and tears, the mother cried, "If we had only held hands sooner." Unity. Civil discourse. On behalf of myself, Dick Powell, and the whole Leadership Corner team, we want to say thank you for being a part of today's program. If you have any comments you would like to make, please don't hesitate. Give us a call, 727-422-1833. Send me an email, dick@ewfw.org. Go to the website, www.ewfw.org. And when you're ready for me to come out and give an opportunity for leadership and accountability, just give us a call and we'll make it happen. Until next time, DW the Wrangler saying, ride hard, ride fast.